Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, Israel launches a new ground offensive in Gaza City. Plus, the Trump administration targets another boat and kills suspected Venezuelan drug traffickers. And the U.S. and China appear to reach a framework deal on TikTok. Israel announced a ground offensive into Gaza City earlier today. An Israeli military official said the Israeli Defense Forces had begun the main stage of their ground operation into the city, where Israel has ordered hundreds of thousands of residents to flee. And the country's Defense Minister Israel Katz posted on X that Gaza is burning. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited Israel yesterday and said that while the United States wished to see a diplomatic end to the war, we have to be prepared for the possibility that's not going to happen, he said. He endorsed the Israeli demand that Hamas surrender its weapons and free all remaining hostages at once as the only way to end the war. Gaza health officials reported at least 24 people killed, most of them in Gaza City, in the early hours of the latest onslaught. President Donald Trump says the U.S. has conducted a second strike on what he described as violent drug trafficking cartels from Venezuela. It's the latest after the U.S. targeted another suspected drug boat earlier this month. I spoke with USA Today White House reporter Zach Anderson for more. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Thanks for hopping on. So just what happened in this latest strike, Zach?
Yeah, so President Trump announced on social media that there had been another strike on a drug boat that was apparently coming from Venezuela. He said that 3 people had been killed, that he ordered the strike, and that he said that there were confirmed narco terrorists on this boat that was in international waters when the U.S. military attacked it.
So in terms of what led up to this point, Zach, I mean, I know we saw a similar strike earlier this month, right? Can you just refresh us on what happened there?
Yeah, so there was 11 people who were killed in the previous strike under similar circumstances, an alleged drug boat in international waters. So this is something where Trump has really escalated his use of the military to go after these cartels. It was something that he secretly authorized in August and now has really ramped up. And he warned that more strikes could be coming here. He said, quote, and on his social media post, in all caps, if you are transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you. So it sounds like, this is the second strike. There could be more to come.
Zach, how did this land stateside? I know we had some pretty strong reactions from lawmakers, right?
The previous strike, which killed 11 people, created quite a backlash, not just from Democrats, but also Republican Rand Paul, who's a libertarian-minded Republican senator, had really pushed back against Vice President J.D. Vance when he touted this strike on social media and questioned killing people without a trial like this. Trump has really pushed to use the military to go after cartels. That is something that has some people concerned. Democrats wrote a letter to the Trump administration asking for what the legal basis of this is and raising concerns about these killings. So it is something that has generated backlash, and this campaign is definitely controversial.
All right. Zach Anderson covers the White House for USA Today. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Angered in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, Trump administration officials say they're planning to use every resource available across the federal government to target left-leaning organizations they say are promoting political violence. Vice President J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller, Deputy White House Chief of Staff, discussed plans yesterday to go after liberal non-government organizations, or NGOs, they said support doxing campaigns against conservatives, help orchestrate riots, publicize the addresses of political opponents, and promote messages intended to create violence. Miller joined Vance on a live stream as the vice president hosted the Charlie Kirk Show to pay tribute to the late conservative activist. Neither Vance nor Miller identified groups that could be prosecuted or face other actions from the administration. Law enforcement authorities investigating Kirk's killing have said the 22-year-old suspect held a leftist ideology and had become increasingly political in recent years. Officials, though, have not said that he was linked with a specific left-leaning organization. After 9 months of waiting, a TikTok sale may be just around the corner. President Donald Trump hinted in a Truth Social post yesterday that the U.S. and China have reached a deal to divest the popular social media platform to a U.S. buyer. I caught up with USA Today national trending reporter Greta Cross for a look at what might be next and how we got here. Greta, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me today.
So, the US and China have reached a framework here. What do we know about what they've actually agreed to?
We just know that President Trump posted on Truth Social early on Monday morning mentioning that some type of agreement that young people in the US would be excited about had been reached. And then it was actually US Trade Representative Jameson Greer who mentioned that on Wednesday, a new executive order that could push back the deadline on the TikTok ban would not be in place because China and US had reached some sort of framework agreement on TikTok, but we really don't know what that means at this time.
So, this has been, over a year since some of these tensions started ramping up, Greta. How did we get to the point we're at this week?
Back in April of 2024, President Joe Biden signed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act, a mouthful there. That federal legislation gave ByteDance, which is TikTok's Chinese parent company, until January 19th of this year, 2025, to divest TikTok. Otherwise, TikTok would be banned in the United States on or after that date. That gets passed in April of 2024. And then by January 18th, TikTok actually goes dark for a little bit. So, folks on the web, folks on their apps in the US, just TikTok is not working. And it only goes dark for not even 24 hours, just a few hours, really. And it's actually the next day, the big day of whether TikTok was going to stay or not, January 19th, that the app was revived because President Trump told tech companies like app stores and internet service providers, hey, tomorrow when I'm inaugurated, I am going to sign an executive order into law. And, you can go ahead and revive TikTok because it's going to be protected for a little bit. We're going to get a deal worked out. So some companies went ahead and did that, a little bit early before that first executive order was signed on January 20th. And then some companies like Apple and Google didn't actually revive TikTok back in the App Store until February, so almost a month after TikTok got live again in the US. So Trump signed that first executive order on January 20th of this year, and that gave him until April 6th, so 75 days, to hopefully strike up a deal with China. Unfortunately, no deal was struck, but on April 4th, he signed a second executive order, once again extending the ban on TikTok. Then on June 19th, Trump signed a third executive order that once again pushed back the deadline for the TikTok ban. That deadline actually expires on Wednesday.
Yeah, now we have that entire timeline with a link in today's show notes that Greta worked on as well. Folks can click on that if they'd like. I think a lot of our listeners, Greta, use TikTok and are wondering what this now means for them functionally. What should TikTok users now expect going forward?
Like much of the TikTok dialogue that has happened over the last year, a lot of this is in a gray area. A lot of this is an up in the air situation. But China has been pretty upfront this entire time that first, it really doesn't want to sell TikTok to the US, but more specifically, that it really doesn't want to sell the algorithm, which is the system that pulls the content and puts it in front of users. And obviously, TikTok is so addictive because its algorithm works so well, and no one really knows how it works except TikTok. So I have been chatting with a few different media experts about what would it look like if the US did buy TikTok, but not the algorithm part. Would the app still work? And I talked with Sarah Krebs. She is the director of Tech Policy Institute at Cornell University. And she said, yes, the app is still going to function, but it's going to be a little clunkier. She compared it a little bit to might be functioning a little bit more like Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. So algorithms on social media platforms we're all familiar with, but maybe not as niche into a user's interests or demographics as TikTok is known for. Sarah described TikTok's algorithm like the special sauce, which I've heard several media experts describe it that way. And without the special sauce, what is TikTok? And I think it's really just going to be a waiting game to see if China budges at all on wanting to sell the algorithm with the other assets, or if a US buyer is going to have to really just recreate a new algorithm for TikTok.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the special sauce. A lot of folks not thinking about maybe that algorithm aspect. We had expected a deadline tomorrow, Wednesday, as it pertains to this issue, Greta. What does this framework now mean for that deadline?
The last executive order that President Trump signed said the next deadline would be Wednesday, but we have been told that no more extensions are coming, but we also know that Trump is meeting with the Chinese president on this Friday. So it's not really clear what's going to happen on Wednesday. From my understanding, TikTok will probably still be around, especially if Trump has promises that by Friday there could be a potential sale.
All right, Greta Cross is a national trending reporter with USA Today. Great insight for us. Thanks, Greta.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And as always, you can email us at podcasts@usatoday.com. I'm Taylor Wilson. I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.